Hello and welcome today. It's very moody outside, so you're gonna hear some thunder, which I think kind of goes along with today's book. A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds is a book that is set in a low-income, high-crime hood area. And we have our main character named Will, and we have his older brother Sean, who really set this entire story into motion in the very beginning. So the whole main plot point that gets the entire book on a roll is when Sean is shot while getting the eczema lotion for his mother. Pretty much the entire rest of the novel goes through the life circumstances that led up to why his brother died and pretty much demonstrating the positive feedback loop. However, we'll get into that a little bit more later. So right in the beginning when Sean dies, he leaves this opening in Will, and Will doesn't know how to manage this whatsoever. And so a quote that represents this emotion really well is, "The absolute worst part is the feeling of your tongue slipping into a newly open space where you knew a tooth is supposed to be but ain't." I thought this was very well written, and I thought it was incredibly relatable, especially for a young adult novel that straddles realism and fiction throughout its entirety with the existence of realistic looking ghosts. Another thing that is mentioned in the beginning is all of the different rules and what happens when somebody's shot. So one of the rules is don't cry. Another one is to always get revenge and to figure out who the person who killed your family member was, in this case Sean, and then the list of things that happen when somebody gets shot is screaming sirens and questions. And this is really true. It's not far from wrong. It's very realistic. And when he talks about how the screaming lasts and is heard above the sirens, the screaming and yelling lasts longer than the sirens and lights. And the lights on cop cars don't turn off the entire time they're there. And the questions last for weeks. And the entire mood of the block is off for weeks for people who've lived there for a while or know how it's supposed to feel, from my personal experience. So I think that was a very interesting point. And then when you bring that realistic statement into what happens with the ghosts and them telling their stories, I thought that was good. That he listed off these ideas and made it really clear that these are the points I'm going to talk about. And on that note, even though it was very melodic and it was rhythmic and it was poetic, it was also written somewhat like a research paper. Here in the beginning, we have our introductory statement saying what we're going to do. It was our thesis. And now we have our main points. And then we're going to go through our main points and understand what they are. And then in the end, we're going to have our concluding question. Are you coming? Are you coming? The middle of the novel was spent exclusively in the elevator. The elevator had a few different setting changes. The more people who entered into the elevator, there were more people who were smoking. First off, just gonna mention, I think they were smoking the wrong type of, especially for the area, based on experience. Anyways, a lot of it was spent him explaining the way that he was feeling and processing his decision and learning the experiences and the truths of the other people who died from something that he was about to do. And it was very good at teaching life lessons A few quotes that really popped out for me one of them was the gun strapped like a brick rubbing against my back. I liked that because a brick, we all know, is really harsh and heavy, and I felt like it was a really good resemblance of the responsibility that comes with owning and operating a firearm or anything that can cause injury to anybody else. Okay. Another quote that I really liked was, "How do you tell water there ain't nothing funny about drowning?" And I liked this quote because we all know that water isn't actually water here. He's talking about grief and anger and the way that he's feeling towards his brother. And I liked that he did use water because, again, it was a good symbolism which shows this author's skill as a poet. Another thing that happened in the middle was the author made it really clear why he chose the title A Long Way Down. When he mentioned 6 feet tall, 6 feet deep, it could really just hit home for readers like me that the title was not only talking about the elevator ride going down from the 7th floor, but also what it's like going from being above ground to being below ground. There was a lot of chit chat between him, Will, and a few other people who played a part in his brother's death, which I thought were really interesting and really insightful conversations, which are worth reading. There were the two people who really stuck out for me, of course, were his brother and his dad. So this is going to bring us along to the ending of the novel. So we're at the end of the novel now. We are in the elevator. We've met the people from his past. We know the decisions he's making, but now we confront his brother and his dad. First, we meet his dad, and there's a few different things that happen. First, he's shocked to see his dad. It's been a really long time. He has a lot of pent-up emotions about it, which he might not have been aware of because one of the rules of the area he's growing up in is men don't cry. Pretty much they don't show emotion. The statement, "Is it possible for a hug to peel back the skin of time, the toughened and raw bits, the irritated and the irritating dry spots, and that bleed?" I thought this was really good because it showed how important this interaction was to him. And in addition to that, it was a little bit of a nod towards his mother's eczema, and the entire reason why this was occurring in the first place was to get his mother's eczema lotion or medication from the different corner store or bodega. Another quote in this book said it was, "This coffin's elevator," which also did a really good job of driving home the point that this novel isn't necessarily about some fictional situation. It was something kind of realistic, but it also did another good example of the author's skill of straddling reality and fiction, which I thought was very good. The ending of the book, this last line, "You comin'?" I thought was a very good summary of everything the novel was pointing out, because it wasn't asking if he was getting off the elevator, it was asking if he was going to join them in getting shot. That was the question. It wasn't, "Are you getting off the elevator? Are you coming with us?" It was, "Are you coming with us to 6 feet down?" I just liked that it was a really good way of summarizing the entire book in 2 words. It felt like a very satisfying ending. I was very proud of the ending of this book. Anyways, overall, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was realistic, yet fictional, and it did a good job of straddling the two. I liked that the author was poetic and that it moved well. I liked that the setting was complex, but it wasn't too complex, and the story plot was easy to follow. I liked that it took place in not only the present, but it also took place in the past, And it wasn't necessarily the most decisive in what it wanted to teach you, but it taught you in a poetic and artful way without telling you something that you didn't necessarily want to hear, especially if you're like, I need revenge. It's telling you why not to without telling you why not to, and it becomes your idea. So in conclusion, I really enjoyed this novel. I liked that it talks about gun violence, and I liked that it talked about positive feedback loops and the cause and effect of decisions. I liked that it was guiding and not necessarily telling, and it led young or youthful or less experienced or ones who haven't experienced similar situations in on what it's like and what it's actually like to make a decision like that, because frequently people don't have to make decisions like that. And so I think it's really interesting that the author was so blunt about talking about the idea of taking somebody else's life and how in the end it's really not right, and especially in that circumstance, how if he did it, he would have been joining his brother and everybody in his life who he's lost, and he would just leave everybody around him without him, and he would leave somebody else the way he's feeling right now, and then they would go out and do the same thing that he just did, and it would happen again. And I liked that the author made that lesson so clear.